Excited for my first podcast, to be
It's
honest.
your first podcast?
It
Oh,
is.
man. Your first time. Well, I'm happy to be your first. Let me make sure I'm recording, actually, real quick. All right, we're recording. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's go. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll be amazing and help me out so much. And as always, thanks to Chris, Siraquan, and Stacy for their support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. All right, so I've got a guest today I'm really excited about. Radu Vucea, he's a senior design executive. He's an educator, a mentor, and community builder with over 2 decades of experience in digital design, from freelancing to leading big design teams for companies such as Fitbit. Radu's passionate about building and growing design teams and communities, and his mission is to create a meaningful impact through coaching, mentoring, and creating successful digital products. So Radu, welcome to the show. I'm super stoked to have you, man. How's it going?
Hey, Jeremy. How's it going? Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. Yeah. A couple of weeks back on LinkedIn, Radu reached out to me, or I reached out to him. I can't remember, but we posted something. We got to talking. Radu sent me a message. He's like, I love this idea of not talking about users in this sort of like amorphic imaginary thing, but talking about the humans that are actually using our tools. So I asked Radu to come on the show today. So I'm really stoked to have Radu. I can't remember. How did the conversation about users and personas? I can't even remember. I should have looked this up before we got in.
I think if I remember correctly, I messaged you about another episode you did, Stop Saying User Test.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, stop saying user testing. Right. And you mentioned you've got this idea that you're trying to promote, stop saying users altogether, because these aren't just like random things. They're people, they're humans at the other end of this thing that we're building. So I love that, man. So before we get into this, tell us a little bit about you, man. How'd you end up on this podcast today?
Oh my God. I'm so afraid to start this because I'm old. I've been using computers since they used cassette tapes to store information rather than hard drives or anything. And there's been several technologies that came and went since then, like the CDs, right? I don't know if our audience remembers that.
Sorry, I have a feeling we have some young, some young folks.
Yeah. So I kind of started fiddling with computers since I was a child. My dad brought computers home, and I was always in front of them. And I sort of got into coding a little bit at first, and then I was really frustrated on how things looked, and I felt I could improve them. So I was actually using Microsoft from page 95 back then to build like web pages. And one day my dad told some friends that, hey, my son can build web pages. I was like, no, I don't tell people that. And he told them, and they came rushing in. Everybody wanted a page back then, a web page. So I started with that, and I did freelancing for about 5 years. And then I started getting into like design studios. I ended up working for Adobe for about 4 years. I moved to another startup that got acquired by Fitbit, where I also worked for about 4 years, and I built a pretty large design team. And for the past few years, I've had several roles. I co-founded a design studio. I'm leading design for a sort of creator economy startup in Berlin. One of my passion projects is also I have an educational program in design, which is called Mental Design Academy. And that really was born out of the fact that I really wanted to hire better people when I interviewed like better designers. And I was like, well, if I want something changed, I got to do it myself. So
yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Mento Design Academy at some point. Don't let me forget to talk about that, because I'd love to promote that a little bit. If I'm sure you'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that in a little bit. Let me ask you this idea. You messaged me and it really resonated with you. This idea of stop saying user testing, and you feel very strongly about stop saying user altogether. Tell me, how did that evolve in your head? What happened? There had to have been I imagine there's some event or some kind of something happened where you said, you know what, this isn't working. We should stop saying user.
Yep. So many meetings, I was sitting and listening, and usually I do a lot of listening in meetings. I try to stop myself from talking too much and kind of listen to people. And no, it's like users was thrown across the table and to the left and to the right and users and users. And I was like asking myself, like, who's that? Like, I have no image of what users means. And these people didn't have either. So it was just a way for them to feel more connected to the people we were building things for. And I guess, users, the word, the making people think about the customers was definitely a good thing maybe 20 years back when everybody was focused on technology, right? And everything was technology and nobody really thought of the customer. They were like, oh, we need to put this into the market. We need to build this. So I was sitting there and listening, and I was like, I had no image for this. What did user look like? And I was like, well, how would I change this? And I realized I had an interview a couple of days past where I talked to someone, and that someone, let's call her Melanie, right? So I was like, well, why don't we call her Melanie, or why don't we call them creators, or why don't we call them like teachers, educators, whoever we're building this for? Why don't we call them by their name? Because this is what they are. So I, like I messaged you, I felt like users was this, non-existing being with no dreams, no problems, no kids, no family, no absolutely nothing. It's just a cover word we use to kind of feel a little bit of we're building this for someone, but we can't articulate for whom we're building it.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if you're familiar with this quote by Edward Tufte. And it was funny because doing a little bit of prep for this interview, I actually researched it. It turns out he didn't actually say this. This quote that's attributed to Edward Tufte is not actually the quote he said. But anyways, even if he didn't say it, I don't think it matters. But only drug dealers and software companies call their customers users. And it's funny because it's sort of exactly like what you're saying, right? Like a drug dealer doesn't care who the person is that buys their crap. They just want you to buy it and keep buying it and don't stop buying it. And I feel like that's often the same kind of thing with our users. Facebook, social media companies, they don't care who you are. They just want more people, eyeballs on their screen. So I love that idea though. And yeah, that when you messaged me and you said, users an amorphous entity with no personality, hopes, or dreams. I love that. One of the things that I've been trying to promote quite a bit with when people ask me, like, how do I talk about my case study and how do I interview and present my work? And I always say, like, use the personas. We create these personas. Almost every case study has a mention of a persona, especially the ones from the boot camps. They always have a persona, but you never mention them again. It's just like, I made a persona. Here's Jim. And then at no point do you mention Jim ever again in the case study. And I love that, where you're like, what they have hopes, they have dreams, they have kids, they have families, they have all these other things going on. User just ignores all of that.
Yeah, that is really true.
In your mind, you start to say, all right, user's not what we need to say. What do you use instead? How do you refer to this person that would be using the tool if we don't call them users? Do you have another backup plan? What do you use?
Absolutely. So first, I think it's important first off to realize you just said users. And what I do, even if I say it out loud or catch myself before saying it, if I catch myself before saying it, I just like stop myself in my thought, rephrase it, and then start saying. And if I said it out loud, I'm also going to say it out loud. Hey, I said users. I didn't mean that. Here's what I meant. And then what I say is, okay, so for example, if I was working at Fitbit, I would have said people who are trying to get out off the couch, athletes, casual gym goers, or, to something the sorts of that. If we're talking about like the creator economy and the startup I've been helping lead the design efforts, I would say creators, content consumers, right? So I would replace it with exactly the description of the audience. And, it's definitely not the whole picture of who these people are. It's still a bit vague, right? Creators is a bit vague. It's not Melanie, it's not Jim, it's creators. But I feel it's one step from this even more vague term, which is users, which right now, if you tell me users, I don't even imagine humans. That's weird. I don't imagine humans. I imagine some sort of robots or something. So it's like it's been passed around so much that I don't even feel like when you say users, it doesn't like a human does not appear in my head as an image.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when I hear you say stop saying users is Don Norman has recently started, maybe it's not recently, but for a while now at least, started saying instead of user-centered design, which he's known for obviously is human-centered design, and thinking about humans. And, it's not just thinking about that one user, but it's how does this whole ecosystem affect humankind and human race? And I don't know, there's so many parallels there, which I find kind of fascinating. But, that idea of human-centered versus user-centered, and thinking about beyond just that user, it's a little different in here because when you think about human-centered, it's like the opposite of personal. It's like instead of users, it's even going beyond that to the entire human race. And what you're talking more about like more specific and personal. The other thing that I was thinking about, I was just on Jared Spool's metrics intensive a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things he says is, start thinking about a very specific user. And in his example, he used the whole week. It was Edna from The Incredibles, right? The woman, I don't know if anyone out there is not familiar. Edna's the character who creates the costumes or the uniforms or whatever for The Incredibles. She's the one who kind of, invents all the new technology and stuff. And in the intensive the whole week, it was, how do we make Edna's life better? How do we actually improve Edna's life? And, this idea of like, do we use a persona or do we use a real person? Is kind of interesting. Jared, his argument was like, identify an actual person. Jim on the shop floor or Beth in accounting or whatever it is. And how can you improve Beth's life? How can you improve Edna's life? Which I thought was really fascinating kind of way to think about this. And it sort of ties, I didn't think about it until just now, actually, but it kind of ties a lot into what you're saying. Stop thinking about user, but think about the person.
Absolutely. I think if you can solve the problem for one representative person, even if you don't create a persona and you just, you think about Ed on the floor, I think you can definitely make a product that's better than thinking about users or thinking generally about personas.
So next question then is, it sort of begs the question, if we stop saying user, what about user experience? What do we call ourselves? What do we say about our profession if we stop saying user? What is the alternative? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm a little bit afraid that I'm going to be part of the group that keeps coming with job names. And, we have like...
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't want to open that can of worms. Watch out.
Exactly. So, we can still call ourselves UX professionals. I guess, if we just decide to change the term now, it's going to take us the next decade to evangelize it and get people to understand what human experience designers are. It's like,
HX. Yeah.
Like I know I need a UX designer, but do I need a human designer, human experience designer? But I think we can think of whether the context that we're in calls for us to refer to what we're doing. I mean, again, user experience designer is the job, but I think we're definitely designing for humans. And I'm actually an architecture dropout, so I learned to design for humans. First off, right? Yeah. So in architecture, you just study the human and behaviors and, even thinking of a kitchen, the flows in the kitchen, how you go between the stove to the fridge to the countertop, how you prepare food and all of that. So I am a kind of a human experience designer. But one thing I've been thinking in terms of user experience is people say, I'm a user experience designer, or I design experiences for users. And what is bugging me is you cannot design the experience. You can design something that you hope will influence the experience by, creating various things, but you cannot control 100% the user experience. And I have this example where, if you're trying to design the experience of a spooky house of horrors, right? And you want to create a scary experience, right? If that user is not moved by gore or by ghosts, or they don't believe in that, they're not going to be scared. They're not going to be scared. They're not going to have a scary experience. So I think, maybe we can call ourselves user experience influencers or something to that point.
That's so funny. Yeah, I love that example. What's scary to you? What's scary to me might be completely, I might be scared of blood and guts, but you might be scared of your mother-in-law. So I love that. That's, the thing that I'm reminded of right now is Calendly. It's funny because not long ago on LinkedIn, somebody posted something about what's the deal? Why does people get so upset with Calendly? And, I can't help but imagine the designers on that team, the problems that they run into that are beyond their control, completely beyond their control. Because when I use Calendly and you use Calendly and we are trying to organize a meeting and I am using it in an improper way, right? Or I'm even being rude in my email, it's completely beyond the control of the UX designer how I use their tool. And if I use their tool and I piss somebody off and that person has a bad experience with Calendly, how does a UX designer manage that? Beyond just that, I mean, back-end services, front-end services not working, APIs being down, the internet speed of everything. You're right. Like, we cannot control the user experience. It's very presumptuous of us to say that, to be honest. It's kind of funny. We have this grandiose, like, well, we're controlling you. Yeah, bullshit. Everybody on the team controls the user experience, all the way from like the designer to the engineer to the product team, the QA team to the other third-party services that we integrate with. So, I love that. It's just such a great analogy, though, of the haunted house. We call them haunted houses here in the States.
Haunted houses. That's right. That was the term I was looking for.
So anyway, I love that example. That's a really fantastic example. I'm gonna use that if you don't mind. I'll give you credit
sure.
every time
Feel free to use it.
My buddy Radu, this is his idea. So cool. I love that. When we do this, right? When we stop saying user, what is the benefit from your perspective? How does this create better products?
Well, first off, I think it really achieves the effect that saying users had 10, 20 years ago, right? Because right now I feel like this does not have any effects anymore, right? We say users, and I think it's an excuse to say technology. Like, a lot of times in the conversations that I'm in, it's an excuse to push for a feature that the product manager is passionate of, or the CEO or the VP. And what they say is, our users need that, right? So it almost becomes an excuse and a cover for pushing again for technology where there may be no need for it, right? So I think the first benefit of it is it really centers us back and does what saying user, when nobody was thinking of the user and the customer, did 10 to 20 years ago. Because it's going to be very hard to say, let's build this feature because content creators need it. And it becomes, like, users is very broad. Users could want anything. They could want this feature or that technology, or they could want anything. Users want to pay $20 a month. Users want everything because there's no personality. But if you say, content creators want 4K streaming or want GPS tracking, go like, GPS tracking? Really? They want that? That's kind of weird. Are you sure? So a user may have wanted that or needed that or, made sense for them, but it doesn't make sense for content creators. So I think the first benefit is it kind of gets us back where users was getting us years ago, when people only cared or focused more on technology, which was to center us back to who we're building this for.
One of the things you just mentioned that kind of got my brain thinking about this is it could help to limit scope, right? So in your example, we need to add GPS or we need to add some random feature, whatever that feature is. And you ask yourself, does that make sense for this particular user set, this type of user? Okay, I just did it again.
It's hard, man.
I know. For the content creators, does that make sense? And you can ask yourself, like, what's the goal of the product? What's the end outcome we're looking for? And does that feature meet the outcome of that specific person? Going back to Jared Spool's UX metrics, that's what a lot of it was outcome based, right? And so in that case, it lets you really think about the outcome, not for a quote unquote user, but for a actual person who is using the tool. So it might help to limit scope. I think that's like a really great example. Like, kind of limit your, tunnel vision's normally seen as a negative, but it helps you kind of narrow your focus, I guess is a better way to say it. Narrows your focus on the things that you're trying to build and do. What outcome are you trying to achieve? Does adding GPS to this really affect any outcome in a positive way?
Absolutely. And I think based on the term that you're going to use, it might also hint at what the outcome of the audience that you're building for is looking for. So if you say people shopping in store, right? So, when you say that, almost the outcome of getting the right products becomes a little bit more obvious than saying, users that are in our stores want this or that, right? So I think it can also help focus that conversation because it kind of hints at what they're doing, what are they using the products for, what are the jobs to be done for them. And I think that can also help. Here's something else that I remembered, and I tell my students, and this is about communicating with intention. So I tell them, if you can say the same thing about any product, so you just replace the name of the product and it still is valid, right? So if you can say users want this, users want that, and you can say that for almost any product, then it's not intentional enough. It's not purposeful enough, right? If you message someone and say, hey, I'm a designer passionate about human-centered design, I would like to hear more about your company, you can replace the name of the person and the company and make it valid for any company. So that's not purposeful, right? So I would say also user kind of lacks purpose when you're using it, because users are both, for like how you said, or Edward, drug dealers and software companies. You have users when you're going grocery shopping. You have users when using Uber or any other app. So I think it's too generic to even mean anything.
I love that idea though of communicating with intention, and like you said, user has there's no intent there. There's no specificity to that specific tool or feature, and therefore it's just another word, another random word. Replace user with football or dog or whatever. It's just kind of meaningless. All right, so curious. Personas. When we think about personas, and obviously, like the idea of a persona is meant to humanize that user in a way, right? So when you think about personas, how do you feel about the use of personas? Do you feel like they're too generic even sometimes, or do you feel like they should be more specific, or maybe it's how we use the persona? I don't know. What are your thoughts on personas? You probably have a lot of thoughts. Go ahead, list them all out. We're listening.
Oh my God, I have so many thoughts about personas. So first off, I think that just creating personas is obviously not enough. There's a lot of unseen work of making them visible, evangelizing them around the company, facilitating your teams to refer to them, posting them in the meeting rooms or sending deliverables or like files over that depict them. So getting everyone to use them is something that many boot camps, many educational programs, many courses don't even cover. It's like you do it and that's enough, and you never speak of it. So I think used right, I think they can help. But I think one step further is, as you mentioned, if we can identify one person that really represents a group and it's a real person and we can actually talk to them, because with these personas, you cannot talk to them. They're like static deliverables.
Right, they're imaginary, yeah.
They're imaginary. So I even think because of that, again, I think these are some tools that were developed to get us to be more human-centered maybe a decade or two ago. But I don't think they work anymore because they've been so overused and used in the wrong way that people don't really trust them anymore and they don't see them as real things. So, if I talk with someone about personas, they go like, oh yeah, personas, whatever, right? So I think I would rather identify a person and make them visible to the company and share the interviews and see that it's an actual person, right? So I think personas help, but one step further is you can actually identify a person. And the times when personas don't work, I think, is when people overuse them in the wrong way.
The question, all right, you mentioned something about them being static, right? Like you design them, you create them, they're there, and that's a point in time. 6 months later, a year later, things may have changed. So I'm curious, on your team or when you talk to students and stuff, how do you promote the use of personas? Or maybe a better question is, how do you promote building a persona so that it can become more dynamic?
So first off, I think it comes down to how you decide to build a persona. And oftentimes it's built mostly on stakeholder feedback. So it's like a proto-persona. So it's like, oh, we know who our customer is. Let me tell you. And then you build it. And then I have a pet peeve with like progress bars or stars for personas. They're like 55% introvert or 20% passionate about technology. I'm like, how do you even use that? Like, who talks about you like that?
What's the point? Yeah.
And then another thing that another pet peeve is like using sort of like these marketing sort of language. So it's like Steve the buyer.
Yeah, God,
marry
it drives me
the
nuts.
researcher, right? So it's like nobody calls you like that. I don't know if people call you in any way, but they don't call me Radu, the researcher, in any friends or professional circles, no matter how much passionate I am about research. So the first step comes into like what's the input for these personas, and if it's humans, and if you have a practice of constantly talking to humans, and if you understand these are living documents, then you can always update them and you can always add more nuance as you research, as you get to know your customers or human for whom you're designing better. You can update these. And we actually, many times, we tell our students, look at this more for at a first step for yourself, right? It's getting you more centered on who you're building this for. And then, if you can do this, make it available for your team. Let them know who's the person you're trying to build for. But I think it's keeping yourself accountable and centered on who you're building for, because as designers, we're often at fault for the same mistake that many other roles in a company do, which is we lose focus for whom we're building, and we just go off pixel peeping. We're like being very biased about what should we build. So we should hold ourselves accountable to whom we're building for, as much as holding other people, other roles outside of the design team accountable and centered on who we're building for.
Oh, I love that you mentioned that. What's funny is at work, where I work, what we've done is we've created what we call a playbook. And that playbook has the personas, but they also have maps and journey maps, service blueprints. There's all kinds of artifacts, interviews, links to interviews, all the stuff that we've done, is there. And we call it a playbook because it's meant to, in theory, just like it sounds, run a play. So when we're trying to make decisions, in theory, because we don't always use it the way we should, obviously, but in theory, you should be able to open the playbook, find the people that you're building for, the user role or the whatever persona, whatever you want to call it, and look at all the available information, set the right context so that the decision that you make is informed, well-informed. Right. So what we've done, and we use WordPress, which is weird because it's a multi-site thing that our company has, and it was an easy way for us to build it. I've had other people, when I tell them about this, say, "Well, why don't you use Notion? Notion would be a great way to do this if you could build it with Notion," and we unfortunately can't. But you could take something like Notion, something that's dynamic, something that anybody can get in and change at a moment's notice. You find out something is different, change it, right? And what we have started to think about was, how do we build this so that anybody can update a persona given new information? If it's a product manager and they've had an interview with a user and a UX person wasn't there, let them update it. Now, in theory, you shouldn't be updating it based on one conversation, right? But, let's say for some reason, the UX team wasn't involved, which happens more often than we like to admit. But, if that happens, then the UX team isn't involved. Somebody else can go in and change it, or somebody creates a new process map. They can go in and add it to this thing. And the cool thing about how we've built it with WordPress is all the taxonomies, we've linked everything together, and it becomes dynamic. It becomes a living thing. So we don't have to have somebody go, "Oh, I got to go open up Figma and redesign that very specific card with the fancy thing," And the funny thing is, these things are ugly. They are so ugly. I would never put it in a portfolio. But, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be pretty, right? We're not selling something. The idea is, it's just there. It's words on a page, and we try to style it a little bit to make it look nice. But it's not some beautiful thing you would see on Dribble.
Oh, yeah.
Or you'd never win a design award for this persona. So, that's, I think, people go wrong,
Yeah, I think as designers, we like to make things pretty. And I think with time, personas have become this design project where we do like a cool persona card. It's like got like a cool photo and like some cool visuals.
Yeah.
And we forget the entire purpose for it. And something else that I keep telling my students is, they always ask like, "Radu, what's the right way to build a persona? What's the right way?" And I'm like, you know what? It doesn't even matter as long as the outcome is what was intended. So if the outcome is we're all aligned on a real human and we're, building for them, it doesn't matter how that looks like. It could be like a Google Doc. It could be like scribbles on a page. It could be anything as long as the outcome. Sure, you can format it and make it pretty and whatnot. But if you focus too much on how it looks and you completely forget about the outcome, which happens a lot of times. Students learn to build personas and they don't understand what's the outcome of it, which is all of us being aligned on the human we're building for.
Now, you mentioned something I think it's worth calling out, and I kind of referenced it when I was talking about the thing, but it's not just for the UX team. That's something a lot of people don't realize, and they complain, oh, personas are useless. And I'm like, well, they're useless probably for the UX team at a certain point in time. Once you've got everybody kind of understands what the users are and who the users are, I'm doing it again. Once that specific group is or who that specific group is and what they need, we tend not to reference them anymore. But there are a lot of people in our team that don't have that domain knowledge stuck in their head like we do. And I think very strongly that, just like you said, the whole team getting aligned around it, that is critical. And I think that is why, a lot of teams, they find those personas to be somewhat useless. It's because they're static point in time. Stuff has changed and they're no longer valid, and they're not sharing them with the whole team. And they haven't made it easy to update. They haven't made it easy to share. And that's when I think personas start to get a bad rap. And I just want to highlight the fact that what you said is, it's for the whole team to get aligned so that you're all on the same page as you make decisions together.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't just be like UX team making decisions. It shouldn't just be product team making decisions. It's all of us together, even with engineers. I say engineers. I'm going to go ahead and say it. They need to be involved with this too.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody gets alignment and understands what they're doing and why it's important and what that outcome is that we're all trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
That is where this whole thing we're talking about today, I think, comes back full circle, because it's not about a user. It's about a specific human using the tool, getting an outcome that we want. And we all have to be aligned with that outcome. Which leads me to my next question. How do we get our teams to do this? It's easier said than done, I'm sure. But what are your thoughts?
Oh, man. Well, so I think, not to sound cheesy, but you need to be the change that you want to see in the world. So first off, kind of starts with you, and being disciplined and being vocal about not saying users. You can get very creative with all the ways in which you could do this. For example, in one of the teams that I'm working, they wanted for us to stop saying guys. So they installed a bot that detects whenever someone says guys on Slack, and then
you guys,
you guys, and then kind of says, do you mean team or folks or friends or colleagues, right?
I love it.
The other thing is, I think you need to find sponsors, you need to find advocates. And this also, by the way, stands true for personas. So how we did it at some point in one of the teams I was working in is if they're just pieces of paper on the wall or like PDFs, nobody will care. But if you have an advocate, if you have someone that represents that persona and speaks for them and about them, first off, it kind of gets you the feeling that you can go and ask that persona something, because now it's being advocated by someone. So then I think, first off, definitely changing yourself, noticing when you say users and getting yourself to a point where you stop saying users. And then I think leading by that example, people will notice you stopped saying users. So they're going to notice something is different, right? So if they say, well, our users need that, and I reply with, I think you're right, our content creators need that, they're going to go like, whoa, wait, what did you say?
I love it.
Like, you used a different word. What was that?
You just normalize it, right?
Yeah, you normalize it.
Yeah.
And then you definitely, depending on the size of the company, if it's very large, you need to find these other people that, also agree with you, and also have them say humans or content creators or whatnot instead of users. So I feel like it can almost spread and get in, but it's not going to be easy. I do agree that it's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's not easy, yeah.
I would also say you need to convey why you're doing this. And I think this is definitely a topic for designers, because a lot of times we talk about the why behind our activities. You need to let your team know, like, what's the benefit of this? Just like we spoke today, like, what's the benefit of humanizing language in UX, right? What's the benefit? How will this help us? And why should they care about this?
I love that you mentioned that, because one of the things that I think very strongly is that one-on-ones, this is a really great opportunity to evangelize this. So, and I talk about one-on-ones. I mentioned this a couple weeks back on LinkedIn, but one-on-ones are not just for you and your manager. It is, I think, very important to have one-on-ones with product owners, stakeholders, engineers, whoever you work with on a daily basis, to just, it's another opportunity to just get alignment. This is I think, a really great opportunity to talk about this one-on-one without a big group, no other interruptions, no other people butting in, just you and that other person having a conversation about this, and this could be about anything, really. I mean, like, it's a really great way to just get somebody on your side, regardless of what the topic is. But this is a really great thing. Another thing, I keep talking about Jared Spool's metric intensive, but a lot of stuff we've talked about today ties back in there directly, which is interesting. Jared mentioned something that I thought was really a really great insight, was find a champion. Find a champion. And this could be somebody you don't even know is aligned because they've never mentioned it in a public setting like a meeting or something. But having these one-on-ones, you get the opportunity to find that champion who can then go and talk about this and change the way they talk in meetings. So it's not just you. It's you and another person, and eventually a second, a third, and a fourth, and a fifth. And then eventually everybody is aligned. And when a new person comes in, they start saying user. We don't say user, we say, whatever, content creators or whatever.
You create a culture.
Yes, you create a culture, and it slowly happens over time. This is a very slow process. But I thought that was just like a really great tie-in. The other thing I thought about, I don't know, if in Europe they have the game Taboo. You guys ever heard of that game, Taboo?
Yeah, I think so.
It's got a buzzer, and you press a little thing whenever someone says the word they're not supposed to in the game. You buzz them. Back in high school, I had a teacher, an English teacher. Whenever we did presentations, a bunch of high school kids, like, all these filler words, and every time someone said like, she would buzz in the middle of the presentation. So you could take one of those in a meeting. Anytime someone says user, you just buzz them.
I think you can build it with AI now.
You could do it with AI. Just get a robot that just plays in the meeting and, or like sirens go off or something. But it's very similar. It got me thinking that bot when you say guys. Anyway, I love that. Yeah. That's really great. So the one-on-ones, the culture, changed over time. It really is something that I think needs to have. It's not just us, obviously. It's something the whole team needs to get aligned with in order for us to get there.
Absolutely.
So I love that.
And I think we just helped everyone, because right now you can just, if you're listening, you can just share this podcast with your team, and they're going to understand why they shouldn't say users.
That's right. Exactly. Let me just save you some time. Share the episode. Share it in your work Slack channel. Tell all your buddies, and we'll send you a Beyond UX Design sticker. If you want to do that, just let me know. All right, cool. So questions. Any other places that you might want to go to find out more about this? Do you have any other further reading? Any other people that that are talking about this that somebody can go out and find some of the stuff they've had to say about it?
To be honest, I resonated so much with you, and I wrote to you because I haven't seen this elsewhere. Like, I haven't seen people talking about this elsewhere. I don't know if you prepared any resources or you have anything to share, but to be honest, this is, again, I repeat myself, something I tell often to my students is, we are kind of at the forefront of it. This is not, like chemistry or physics where most of it has been settled down for like 100, 200 years. And then, we're just like doing incremental changes, but, it's mostly known. Like, I think we are working and learning and working and learning, and we discover new ways to improve our craft. And I think, I don't want to get ahead on myself, but this might be we might be kind of the first people, maybe there's other people that I haven't heard or looked at, but I think there's a small set of people that are thinking, hey, we should stop saying users and call them by their names or like by their craft or goal. And I don't know if there's any books yet that have appeared on this theme, but what I think is you can definitely get a lot of value from like podcasts like this, because this is where we get to be a little more courageous. A book takes maybe a year to write, and you need to edit it, and you need to...
A year?
Yeah.
It'd take me like a decade.
Exactly, right? Or something along those lines. I haven't written a book, so I don't know. But I think we, on podcasts and YouTube videos and like groups, we can be a little more courageous and kind of think a little bit forward. And maybe the things that we're sharing here will make it into books in maybe a year or two. But that's kind of my thinking, where, follow people that you... that are the forefront of the industry and leaders and in thought, not just leaders on like a job description on LinkedIn, And I think that's kind of where you can start learning more about this.
So I got to give credit to a guy on LinkedIn that I randomly came across, Drew Harema.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. But I have been saying the whole stop user testing, or you say stop saying user test for a long time. And it's just because to me, it's very clear. Driver test, vision test, stress test, whatever test, user test. Well, I'm testing the user, obviously. And, we're not, right? We're testing the thing and the user is helping us test that thing. We're not testing the user. And so I saw Drew post this exact thing. I was like, yes, thank you. Someone else is saying it. And he inspired me to actually write an article about it with a buddy of mine, Casey Randall. And then that ended up turning into the podcast episode. So anyway, I got to give those guys a shout out because I wouldn't have that episode without that random chain of events. But yeah, you're right. I haven't seen a whole lot of people talking about it, and I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a book or a blog I don't know. Not to say they're not out there. I just haven't seen them. But all right. Well, if we find something, we come across it, find us on LinkedIn, and we'll let you know. All right, cool, man. Well, before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you a few questions just to help all those Beyond UX Design listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. I got a few little random questions. You got a few more minutes? You got to hop?
No, yeah, I'm good.
Cool. All right, let's do it. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
All right. So this, I think, has to be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think when I read that book, I finished it and then I started right over again reading it because I was like, oh my God, there's like so many things here that I need to learn. And a lot of our craft, I think, as designers, what happens is we tend to focus a lot on our craft. So like how good are we with Figma, with like interviewing, with like prototypes, design exercises, all of that. And we don't see or forget that success in our career will depend probably like 40% on our hard skills and roughly 50 to 60% on our human skills. People call it, maybe another place where to replace something with human from soft skills to human skills.
Yeah, I love that.
And being promoted, selling your design decisions and interacting with other roles in the company, that all comes down to how you interact with other humans and how you communicate and negotiate. So I think this book is actually amazing. And if you're like a leader or like you're running a design studio or you're a freelancer selling stuff, and you're dealing with customers or stakeholders all of the time, this will be invaluable.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. I strongly believe, and that's actually the whole point of this podcast is the Beyond UX Design is the whole point is beyond the hard skills, because those hard skills will get you the job for sure, and they will make you good at your job. But in order to be truly effective at your job, those human skills, I love how you said human skills, are what will make you the most effective UX designer you can. You actually get something pushed to production. And I often say, you can't build great software without great relationships. And Dale Carnegie's book is probably the grandfather of this idea of, it's not about manipulating people. It's about getting people on board with an idea and wanting to do it with you versus trying to just like twist their arm to make them do it.
Absolutely.
So that's a fantastic suggestion. I love that. All right. What is your favorite non-design podcast?
Oh man, I'm afraid I'm going to sound too vanilla, but it's got to be Andrew Huberman's podcast. I think it is one of my...
I'm familiar. What is that?
Andrew Huberman?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, wow. I think he's a neuroscientist with, let me see really quickly, Stanford University. And his podcast, he's probably putting like a couple $100 behind each episode because he's documenting everything.
Wow, a lot of research in that?
Yeah. And he's talking about, how to be more creative, how food influences your thoughts and your behavior. And it's a lot about the human body. And I just love it. And, I could find a connection to like, if you apply what he's saying and what he's teaching, I think, you can definitely become a better designer through that. But it's just an amazing source of information. Andrew Huberman, I definitely recommend it.
Okay, I've never heard of his podcast. I just looked it up. Huberman Labs
Yes.
is what it is. What the name of the podcast is. So I have to check that out. I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
That's cool. I love those kinds. But it's funny because those are not design podcasts, but the content there I think will help make you just a better creative in general and just help you think outside the box and all that stuff. So that's really cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm gonna put it on my list.
Yeah.
All right. What is your favorite meal? And this could be a meal you cook. It could be a meal you've had. Could be a meal you've or your grandma made, whatever.
Yeah.
What's your favorite meal?
Well, so I actually love cooking. It's one of my pastime activities. I even went out and got a certificate as a chef, just because
Really? Oh, wow.
I just
That's
enjoy
cool.
cooking. My friends hate me because I always post on Facebook and Instagram the stories, and it's pretty late because I get off work pretty late, so I start cooking. So I post around like
Yeah.
10 p.m., 11 p.m., and they go like, "I hate you. I shouldn't be posting food at this hour."
That's
But
funny.
lately, I think I've been loving doing Philly cheesesteak at home.
Ooh,
Yeah.
you got like a flat top to do it, or how do you do? How do you do?
No, unfortunately, I just use
Philly
like a
cheesesteak at
cast
home?
iron pan.
Oh, ooh,
I
okay.
would
Yeah,
love to
yeah.
have like a flat cooking surface.
Oh,
Yeah.
one of those 60-inch ranges, man. Oh, yeah. That's awesome, dude. So I love it. I actually, not a lot of people know this, but I was planning on going to culinary school
Oh, nice.
back in the day, and I was very close to going to culinary school. I actually found someone from the CIA, Culinary Institute of America, to sponsor me to go there.
Nice.
And then I got a job in a kitchen, and I was like, you know what? You guys can have this. This job sucks. But I love to cook, but not for thousands of people a day.
This is another thing that people ask me all the time, like, why don't you open a restaurant? You seem very passionate about it. It's like, yeah, because I don't want to kill my passion. Because when you do this as a
Yeah,
job,
exactly.
it's so much hard work. You're chopping vegetables all day and doing a lot of hard work.
So when you say you got a certificate, did you go to culinary school, like a degree, or is this just like something you did somewhere? I don't know. I've never heard of someone getting a certificate for that
Yeah.
before.
So basically in Romania to be able to get yourself hired in a specialized position, you need to hold a certificate that's
Oh, wow. Okay.
that's signed by the government, and you can either go to like a formal training like college or whatnot, or you can do like these very specialized courses. So this was like something after
Oh,
work
okay.
for like 3 or 4 months. I would go once a week after work for like 4 or 5 hours and just like cook and learn. And we went into like a restaurant kitchen and learned.
That's so cool. Oh, I would love to do that.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
That's so funny. Yeah, in the States, they'll hire anybody. You can literally just walk up the street, they'll hire you. All right, cool. Next question. What is your favorite vacation spot? I hate asking Europeans this because I'm so jealous of all the cool places they get to go. But what's your favorite vacation
Okay.
spot?
I just love the mountains. I feel like it's so peaceful and so much nature. And in the winter, I snowboard. And
Oh,
I
cool.
teach other people to snowboard as well. I love that. And in the summer, I just go hiking. So all time mountains.
Don't you live in New York City now?
No, I travel between Romania and the States. So I'm in the States a couple of months a year, Bay Area, Miami, and
Oh God.
yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought LinkedIn said New York. Are you? Where are you right now? Are you in
Right
Romania
now I'm in Romania. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. Any specific mountain range you like the best?
I think the Alps, like definitely there, and that kind
course.
of
You're like right there too. I'm so jealous, man. You know.
yeah, they're pretty close. And Switzerland has this train that you take it, you get on it, and then it takes you up the mountain. So then you just get off it, strap your bindings, and just go downhill.
Just jump out the train.
Yeah,
just down.
exactly. It's just
That's
crazy.
awesome, man. I love that. That's really cool. So snowboarding in the Alps.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's a dream right there. Like I said, every time I ask a European that question, I just get so jealous. I'm originally from New Orleans, which is the very south, right?
Mhm.
And there's really nothing around New Orleans. I mean, 8 hours to like the next
Yeah.
biggest city, like Atlanta or Dallas.
But you have
Even then, you're like,
Colorado,
but it's so far.
Oh,
Though.
yeah.
I mean, if you think of like overlay, New Orleans to Colorado from like Europe, it's like the other side of the continent almost, right?
there's
So
nothing
it's-
close in the States. There's nothing close. Like
I know.
everything's so far.
Everything is so far away. You guys could just take a train. It's so nice. Just hop on a train and you're there in a few hours or a day. I'm very jealous. All right. I'm going to just get upset if I keep talking about this. All right. What's your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
Right. So, design tool.
This is a hard one.
Okay, it's got to be a design tool. Wait, so this is a little bit design related, but it's not Figma. Well, so first off, I gotta admit, I'm a bit of hater on Figma. We use it in all of my teams,
really?
but
Okay.
it kills me with the syncing and the cloud thing all of the time. So actually, I prefer Sketch, but if
Really? Okay.
yeah, because it's faster. It's local. It doesn't have to sync everything. So I feel it's much faster. But sometimes I like an old-fashioned pen.
I love that. Yeah, man, I actually I have this pen. You can't see it at home, everybody listening, but I have this nice Zebra.
He's been taking notes.
I've been taking notes. F701. It's it's my EDC pen. I'm like kind of EDC geek. And then I have, let's see, I got my field notes, notebooks.
Yeah.
I carry this around and I just write. A lot of times I was like, LinkedIn posts or random thoughts. Anyway, I'm with you, dude. I could take a note on my phone, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
The thing that's funny though is like the other day I thought I lost that notebook and I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Nothing's online. So I don't know. I gotta like go and take a picture of every page every once in a while, just so in case I lose it, I'm not gonna have a fit. But so you like Sketch? That's funny. I really like Sketch too. I don't use Figma at work actually because of the security. Because part of with GE Aerospace. They do not want their data on anyone else's servers.
No.
So everything has got to be local and it's locked down. So we have to use Sketch. They don't even let us use Sketch Cloud. That's blocked. So if you try to upload something, it's blocked. So we cannot use Figma. But I do use Figma on my personal computer for like random projects and stuff. But I've noticed though, it depends. Maybe it's just my computer, but Sketch, it is local, but sometimes, depending on the file, it gets like really laggy. But I do like their component library and stuff. I like how their component stuff work better than Figma personally.
Yeah.
Sketch component library just makes more sense to me. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, but cool. All right. So I love that you love pen. I love pen and paper too. I'm with you on that. All right, dude. So cool. Well, that's everything I got. Anything else you want to give a shout out, a plug? I know you've got Mento Design Academy. You want to plug that?
Yeah.
While we're on, we didn't really talk about it at all, but I want to make sure you get a shout out there.
So I really started Mento Design Academy because I wanted to see better designers in the market, right? And there's I know bootcamps kind of get like a bad rep, and I've been a mentor for other programs as well. And actually, I started this program because I wanted to fix a lot of that. So if you're just looking to accelerate your transition to design, this is by no means a bootcamp is a silver bullet. You do this and then you never learn, and it doesn't train you for the real job because you wouldn't be paying for us to be picky CEOs or like push back on your design all day and just be on your nerves. So we definitely want to teach you the basics and the foundation, and then the real world is going to teach you the real world and the reality of companies. So if anyone is looking to accelerate their transition, you can find us at mentodesign.academy. And I guess there's going to be a link in the description of this podcast.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes.
And if you're not sure, just book a call with us. It's free. Send us an email. We're happy to guide anyone, even if we're the right choice or not. That's another thing about us. We try to be open and honest. And if you're not the right choice for us, or if we're not the right choice for you, we're going to convince you that that's the case. And actually, I find myself most of the time in calls with potential students telling them, this is not for you. Here's what you can do.
Oh, wow.
Bad for the business, good for the people.
Yeah, well, that's great though. A lot of times, like I don't want to give them a shout out, but like those the bad boot camps, I guess they're literally just like a money making scheme. I think somebody recently, I've used this analogy like 1,000 times, but I'll do it again because it's perfect. But they compared, the UX design to like the gold rush in the 1840s, and everybody's trying to become a UX designer, and the boot camps are the only ones, making money. Like the people selling the shovels and the pickaxes are the only ones making money back in the day. So
if anyone is listening and you're thinking of getting into design, just know it's a lot of hard work. Sometimes it's a lot of tedious work. It's not all fun. We're not millionaires. I don't know about Jeremy. I am not.
No, God, no.
So just know it's a lot of hard work. So it's not a get rich quick scheme.
No way. Not at all. Cool. Well, all right, y'all. I think that's it for Radu and I for today. I hope we helped to give you guys a little bit more insight. Oh, I said guys again. You heard that? I hope we helped give y'all. What's nice about being from the South is I can just swap out guys and y'all. So anyway, I try very hard not to say guys actually, but I just did it. So I hope we helped y'all to learn to think a little bit more closely when you start to say users and if it is the right term to use or not. But I'm curious, have you thought about this before? Has this been on anyone else's radar? Have you tried to stop doing this with your team? And if so, has it worked out? Let us know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot us an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate a 5-star review, not just 5 stars. I'm talking about a couple sentences. That'll help me out so much. I would really appreciate that. And if you know somebody who might find any of this stuff useful, please tell them about the show. that'd be fantastic. And if you want to help keep the show independent and ad-free, check out the Patreon sponsor packages at beyonduxdesign.com/support. You can join Chris, Siraquan, and Stacy by supporting the show for as little as $3 a month. And there are some sweet perks like a badass holographic Beyond UX design sticker, and you can get a shout out on the show every week. And there's even a package to meet with me for 30 minutes every month. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and check out all the past episodes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, remember, you are more than a designer because there's more to UX than design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all. We'll fix it in post and we'll make you sound beautiful. You'll sound wonderful.
It's like makeup for podcasts.